Hi, this is a full behind the scenes look at what happened with Betty, the Ford Fairmont, owned by Ian HubNut, when he brought it over from New Zealand to the UK, and I did a load of work on it. I've decided to document all my work. I did behind the scenes, lots of little in the know type stuff. Yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. Cheers. What? You want more? Okay. Sorry, I can't put this book down. It's really good. Okay, fine. This is the story from my point of view of Betty secretly traipsing around the world, making a journey from New Zealand to the UK. Normally my point of view is a worthless one, but in this case, I was probably one of the only people who knew of Ian, that's HubNut, but you knew that. Probably one of the only people who knew of his plans to bring Betty back to the UK. And so in April 2021, the Hoig Tracer arrived in Southampton, shortly followed by Ian himself, Carly, or Miss HubNut as she would be known, and myself in this, my C6, back when it was actually on the road. Aboard the Tracer was Betty. She'd made the trip all the way over from New Zealand to the UK. And we didn't know where Betty was. She'd got off the Tracer and had been unloaded and stored in one of the compounds in the dockyard, but we didn't know where that was. So we spent the next half an hour mooching around in a dark-coloured Citroen-looking shifty, trying to find her. Eventually we did, and that moment was captured on video by Ian himself.
There she is.
Oh,
This is our first. It's Betty. She's got a yellow sticker on. Does that help us? Does that tell us anything? Does that tell us how to find the car? Lovely Land Cruiser here as well. Oh my God, Betty, you're here. Hello, old girl.
And then what ensued was some fun and games, trying to find who was in charge of the yard that Betty was in. We were in the docks. We'd got through the security gate, which was just up. You just drove in. And yeah, trying to find the person in charge of that yard so we could get Betty. And the plan was to book Betty in for an MOT over the road from my workshop, so that she could be driven from the dockyard here, because the first thing you have to do is get an MOT on the car. You have to MOT it to be able to register it. And so we're booked into an MOT. You're covered to drive it as long as you're driving to the MOT station, which we did. Trying to get Betty jump started on a set of £9.99 2-litre rated jump leads was interesting, but to be fair, they actually did quite well.
Right, we came to Halfords to get some jump leads. Halfords has closed, so that's helpful. So we're going to go and see if Wilco's got any jump leads. I blooming hope so. Today is rapidly going off the rails completely. Says up to 2 litres. Great success was had.
You have power.
I have power, although it says for up to 2 litres. So it could be exciting.
What, 4 litre one side and 2.7 the other?
Yay! We have some bits of string. We don't think this is going to last long, so hopefully it'll work. Oh, that looks more positive already. Is it going to work though? Come on, Betty. Yes! Betty lives! Thank you, Wilco, for my £11 lead. Air conditioning is kicking in. Oh, there we go.
So with Betty now with me for the foreseeable, I've been tasked with getting the car through a UK MOT. Thankfully the suspected IVA wasn't actually needed, because if you're importing a car, IVA isn't needed on anything over 10 years old. Betty had a few issues to resolve before this, not least including the installation of a rear fog light. Cars down under don't need one, but we do. One of the parts of the car Ian always liked was the simplicity of the wiring. Unfortunately, during my first job, which was wiring the fog lamp, I discovered that Betty actually uses an early form of multiplex wiring. Lots of control modules for things. Fitting the fog lamp wasn't as simple as expected. I did hunt around for an OE style switch from a similar model which might include a redundant button which could be utilised, but to no avail. I sent him some images of the various switches we could use, along with some suggestions as to where they could be installed. The thought of a separate lamp nailed to the bumper somewhere filled me with as much dread as it did Ian, but happily the situation was saved by sacrificing one of the reversing lamps. They're not needed for the MOT at all. Cars in the UK sometimes only have one, and it's always on the near side. So we sacrificed the offside reversing light on Betty and converted it into a fog light. Of course it had to be red, so do we paint the lamp or do we fit a red LED? We fit a red LED. It does look a bit dim there, but in the flesh it's not so bad. While I had the rear lights out to modify the wiring, I discovered something unsightly. Before I thought about that anymore, I tackled the handbrake warning lamp, which wasn't extinguishing and would fail an MOT. Thoughts and fears over where to find the handbrake warning lamp switch for a Ford Fairmont were happily unfounded, as it turned out the switch had simply fallen apart. Of course I had to remove the seat and centre console to get to it, but the repair was happily simple. From that point on, it was MOT time. What could go wrong?
Is it? Yeah. I'll show him. Have a look at there. Oh, hello. Oh my god. Nice. Okay. That'll be the clunk then. That'll be the clunk.
Mind you, the fail wasn't that bad. The offside upper ball joint, or swivel joint, had excessive play in it, but everything else was advisories, like a nail in the tyre, they were going to be replaced anyway, and a slightly puffing exhaust, which we could patch up with a welder to prevent it becoming anything worse the following year. Watch this video for that. What was surprising was that it just passed New Zealand's version of the MOT, which they call the WOF, Warrant of Fitness, I think. And that wasn't long before hopping on the boat. So I'm thinking, how many laps of the top deck of the Hoyd Tracer did they do in Betty? Must have been loads. Not a problem though. Play on the ball joint, because there is a spare ball joint in the boot. That must be the one we need, because it's too coincidental to be anything else. Wrong. So now we have 10 working days to locate and fit a new ball joint in time for the MOT retest. Otherwise we're going to have to shell out another 50 quid or so and start again. Where on earth would you find a ball joint for an AU Fairmont? I mean, besides Australia and New Zealand. But where in the UK? See, I could see this being an eBay or Amazon job or something like that and having to come from overseas. I ordered my C6 ball joints, which I will fit one day. I ordered them from Europe and they took days to come in. However, 24 hours, in fact less than 24 hours, after Betty had tripped over in the MOT, she had the replacement ball joint not only fitted, she was awaiting the retest. Ian had found a coach builder
in the UK, I forget the name of them. They convert Fairmonts into hearses and other exciting vehicles, and they sold them all. And with that, the UK MOT was passed the following day, 9th of April. That comes on after the 8th of April. So that's it, right? Well, no. What follows are a series of videos recorded during the work. So this is all prior to his big reveal video. This is everything up from probably April, right the way up to when he collected, which I think was at the end of July or beginning of August 2021. So this covers that interim period. You were all in the dark. You were all none the wiser when this was going on. I'll try and date all these as we go, and I'll hopefully stitch them together into something broadly coherent. Yeah, I don't know how many videos it will spread over, but you know, 1, 2, 3, I don't know. Don't know how much footage I've got yet. So the first video up is first thing I did after the MOT, which was to weld over some cracks in the exhaust. It wasn't about making it look pretty, because it sure as hell didn't, but it was about future-proofing and protecting a hard-to-find part, so that the car could just be used and not have to faff about with it. That's the first one up, and then subsequent videos after this will follow it all the way through. We might have some fun and games with the immobiliser.
Hello, you join me today on a hot Saturday afternoon, which means I'm in a bit of a grump because I don't like the hot weather. I want to work on the SM, but I can't do it because this is a business and I have to do business things and work on customers' cars, because no, I must be nice because it's a customer. Customers come in and they've said, can you work on my car? And it's just this big, like, Blancmange Ford saloon thing. I don't even know what it is. It's hideous. This means I can't work on the SM like I would want to. So I'm going to have to go and do something on that. But being that I've set up and psyched up to do filming, and I thought, well, I'll just film that instead. So it's this, I mean, what is that? Eh? Yeah, I mean, look. It barely even fits on the ramp. I mean, the guy's nice enough. I didn't catch his name. He said something about Netty or Hetty or pushing it off a jetty. He was mumbling into his beard. I couldn't understand what he was saying. It's not even from this country. It's from, I don't know, Uganda or something like that. He seems really attached to it, though. He really, really likes it. Maybe there's some sort of sentimental attachment, or he's, I don't know. Maybe he drove it somewhere and it didn't break down. So it has got very, very, very good air conditioning. I'll give it that. I think it's been regassed recently. It says it's done loads of miles as well. And oh, and the headlining's falling down. Looks like someone tried sticking it back up, but with PVA or something. Also, that tow bar, that is evil. I mean, really shin-splittingly evil. So we've got to do some welding. Now that actually means that it's actually got to come down first. The reason it's got to come down is because I have to disconnect the battery. I mean, look. Ugh. Ugh. Look at all that. I'll show you everything. There you go. Bonnet release. There you go. Look at that. So back over with the spanners. I imagine a metric will fit. I don't know if whatever country this is from is in the metric system or not. It does fit. I love that as well, look. So that's, they know you're going to spill some. They go, no, they're going to spill some. So if they spill it, it will fall onto the floor, not onto the belt. Which is a better place to have it, but screw the environment. There are two areas we need to weld. I'll pause this because it will take forever. Right, so up in the air. And the first bit that needs welding is here. Exhaust. As you can see, it's wet. That is the result of the process of combustion. Only thing is, it's supposed to stay in the exhaust. It's not supposed to come out there. Now that's not a severe leak. It's not really. I mean, there's a tiny puff coming from it. It's minor, but it'll only get worse. So if we nip it up now with a bit of weld, then that will halt that one in its tracks. There's the good access because this car is very old school. It's like, I'm a monocoque, but I still want to have chassis beams. It's old school. So yeah, let's buzz that bit up. You might actually be questioning, why would you weld an old exhaust up? Surely if it's split, which is what's happened there on an original join, then the exhaust is on its way out. Well, yeah, there is logic there. That is a fair point. That is some catalytic converter as well. Imagine how much to weigh that in for. But I think this is the original exhaust. I'm not 100% sure, but it wouldn't surprise me. I know that sounds crazy to say that because this car is 11 million years old, but I think it is the original exhaust because that's not original. That's some kind of, well, I hope it's not. This bit probably isn't, because as you can see there, that radius suddenly gets thicker up here. That's because it's a cheap bender basically. It's compressed it, put a kink in the pipe. Cheap aftermarket exhausts use cheap aftermarket tooling, and you can see again there on that pipe where it goes into the back box, it's compressed here. Now original exhausts from the factory don't have that, and that's why I think this section, which it's hard to pick it out, but you can't really see, but you can feel it. It's smooth all the way along, and here as well, because they've got much better tooling. It's a lot harder to make a bend like that, but of course the exhaust will flow better and work better. And exhausts do last a long time, although it sounds crazy. This is a Ford. I mean, this car is 20 years old at least. It should really, the car should have rusted away, or let alone the exhaust. But they don't. They last a long time. Modern exhausts, you will get 100,000 miles out of one easily, as long as you don't live in the sea. SpongeBob SquarePants would struggle. So I think it's been replaced there. I think that's what's happened. I think this is the original silencer. So this section here, this is all, I would bet money that's all original. There's even some sort of coating on it that would have helped, and that, I bet that's the original cat as well. I think it's been cut, and actually that pipe there has been sleeved into that one, so that's probably the original diameter of the pipe. I'll measure it later. I don't know actually, it might not be. And yeah, someone's bought this aftermarket section here, and which would mean that black box there is probably aftermarket as well, which makes sense because it's in a bit of a state compared to these. And yeah, they've grafted it in. They've just sort of sleeved it in, welded it up, which means that this entire section, all the way to the front there, I reckon that is the original section. That silencer at the back doesn't have the same construction as the others. There's no, you see how those ones look a little bit like a pie, a crimped pie along the outside, but this doesn't have that. And that looks a little bit, I mean, I could be wrong, but that tailpipe looks a little unfinished as well. But we're not fussed about that. We're going to concentrate on this bit, and the reason we're going to concentrate on this bit and weld this up is simply to prolong this, because as you've already seen, with that section there, being that looks worse than these, and we can't be certain, but I'm pretty confident that is newer than these. I want to keep this as long as possible. Doesn't buzz, doesn't rattle. There's a bit of a puff coming from it, but it's slight. But if we don't nip this up, then that fracture there will work its way all the way around that joint, and eventually it'll detach, and that will be bad.
Safety first. Now the first thing I'm going to do, other than safety, is clean the area up. It's got a bit of rust around it. Welding doesn't like rust. Try and weld onto rust, you get covered in sparks and molten metal, so I'm going to clean it up first and try and make it shiny. always want to try and clean much more than just the area you know you're working on, because when you start welding you don't know how far you're going to go. We can assume that the metal in this is quite good quality because it's lasted as long as it has, so it'll probably be quite good to weld with, but once you start it's too late if you underguess it. The other thing you've got to do is make sure you've got enough attachments for the wire brush, because this can, well, it's struggling to get in there, to be honest, because the body of the drill's getting in the way. But what we need now is a flat disc one that can kind of spin and get right in there. So we've got a different attachment now. Definitely got the goggles with these ones, because these ones are fantastic at showering you in bits of wire. You ever see Pirates of the Caribbean where they fire cutlery out the side of the cannons when they run out of cannonballs? Can't remember whose idea that is. But and the fella who's in the office, whose eye keeps falling out, he gets a fork in the eye and he's looking around and it's swivelling. That happened to me with one of these. Stuck at my eyeball. And yeah, it's not pleasant. It's easier to sort out than arc eye. Arc eye is worse, but yeah, so goggles always with this stuff. I'm not teaching you to suck eggs or anything, it's just, yeah, I'm sure you would wear goggles. And just because there's water in there, that doesn't mean anything bad. A lot of people say, oh, the head gasket's gone. No, how much percentage of combustion in the engine results in water? Quite a lot. That's why planes kick big trails of the stuff out the back. It's you make water when you burn. It's just normally you don't see it, but these things are fantastic at collecting it and then releasing it at the bottom. Some exhausts even have a little hole deliberately in them. Some of the BX ones do, to drain it, because otherwise it just builds up and rots out from the inside out. Where are we at? Okay, so I can see the crack. It starts about here and it ends about, actually, it ends about there. And that's where the metal's pitted, so it's just rust, it's just rusted. But it's only a tiny crack. Obviously, in a rear-wheel drive car with the engine in line, that's not getting as much load on it, but with a front-wheel drive car engine mounted transversely, every time you accelerate or rev the engine up or come off the throttle, the engine rocks back and forth in the engine bay, not side to side like a rear-wheel drive car, and that actually tugs the exhaust back and forward. So if you've got a crack or anything on a front-wheel drive car, you'll go through that so quickly. Rear-wheel drive, yeah, it gets an easier ride in a rear-wheel drive car. You know, this problem does anyway. Right, so I've got one more attachment, which, to be honest, it has seen better days, but I think with a certain amount of persuasion, I can probably force it in there. Here's our friend, Mr. Mig. You can hear it when it hits the sweet spot. As I say, it's not going to look good anyway, so. So you hear that pause there? There's not quite enough wire speed on it. It's actually coming out better than I thought it would. It's working. Again, it ain't going to look pretty, but it's working. I could have put just this over the crack, couldn't I? No, I couldn't. Thing is, I had to weld it because the crack would have just got bigger whether it was covered up or not. There's two sides to welding that up. First is stopping the leak, and the second is stopping the crack, getting rid of it. So yeah, this is still going to be really hot. It will last. It's strong. God, it's strong. It's stronger than it was when it came out of the factory, because it's got about 5 tons of metal welded into it now. Leave it alone, you're all saying. Well, I can't. It's killing me. Absolutely. The thing is, one of the reasons I think I like working on cars, I think it's the satisfaction of when you get a job right. And there's no satisfaction if it goes wrong. But anyway, the exhaust is hot. That sealant will dry pretty quick. I thought this was a little interesting side note. I found it interesting anyway. You'll be the judge of it. So you've got this, as I say, beast of a tow bar, very painful should you have the misfortune of trying to squeeze between it and a big red van. Underneath here, electrics connection for your caravan or trailer. So the plug is obviously a slightly different shape because New Zealand, but it's in its own little recess. And I'm thinking, well, so what's that recess for? Is that for a tow eye? Well, I don't think it is, because there isn't a tow eye there. Is there a tow eye anywhere else? Can't see one. Maybe there was something that had to be removed in order to facilitate a tow bar. But even I don't think it is. Look at the bumper. It's cut there, and it's got a back piece to it, and it's got this here. So I think that bumper is specifically made for a car with a tow bar. You just don't get that in this country. You take a hacksaw to it.